kind of a family thing. You know, they had an Uncle Festus that knew how to do, you know, the Chet tunes and maybe some Merle Travis and maybe a little Jerry Reed. And like, hey, so it's this very family-oriented kind of oral tradition of learning this stuff. And there were really no musicians. My mom played piano in the family, but that was it. And she played really well, but you know, just kind of as a hobbyist. None of my other siblings were players, but they were certainly into music. And my brother had a massive record collection, and because I was the youngest kid, I was the youngest of 7 kids, my brother was the oldest, there were 5 girls in between. And because of that particular sibling ratio, I might say I was destined to play blues music, having an additional 5 mothers at my beck and call at all times. But, so my brother and I had to room together, being the only 2 boys, so I was listening to all kinds of stuff at a very early age that I would not have other than that, because I'd come into the room all the time and he'd be playing, you know, Bold as Love. I listened to that stuff. I was like, oh my God, I got to get me some of that. So I did a report on Jimi Hendrix when I was in the 3rd grade. That's how twisted I was. And then he was listening to Cream all the time, and I'd hear the Cream stuff, you know. So when I would come home and he'd be sitting there Indian style in front of the record player, and I was this little kid coming in from playing baseball, I go, what are you listening to? And he'd go, this is the greatest band ever. The greatest guitar player, the greatest bass player, the greatest drummer, Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce, and Ginger Baker. I said, wow, this is unbelievable. So when I was very young, I was inundated with power trio-itis. Hendrix, Cream, James Gang was a huge one. And then, of course, there was, you know, Beatles, Stones, and Allman Brothers, and Zeppelin, and all this other kind of stuff. But I can't overemphasize how I was a total Hendrix and Cream freak. So when I started playing guitar when I was 12, that was the stuff I was going for. I mean, the country stuff I heard when I was a kid was, you know, Hee Haw used to be on, right? And Saturday afternoons, you know, before there was cable TV, you had like 3 stations. And then there on Saturday afternoon, you're flipping through, you'd see like Star Trek reruns and stuff like that. And then they'd have like Lawrence Welk on one channel. And then there would be Hee Haw. And I didn't get it. You know what I'm saying? I remember I had some, my mom has one brother who lives up in Antigo, Wisconsin. Anyone familiar with Antigo? Deep behind the potato belt is Antigo, Wisconsin. And when we'd visit him up there, they'd be watching Hee Haw. I was like, you know what? That's a fake cornfield, number 1, okay? These jokes aren't funny. And what is that noise? And I hear this, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know. All that kind of stuff. I thought I was going to hurl, you know what I'm saying? I was not feeling it. And it wasn't until quite a bit later when I started playing guitar and Eric Clapton came out with I so wanted to hear some good Eric Clapton because I was such a huge Cream fan and Blind Faith fan and Derek and the Dominoes, but then it got into the 70s and I enjoyed some of those records, but it's like he was intentionally not playing any cool guitar just because he wanted to be, you know, J.J. Cale songboy at that particular point. And there were some cool tunes, you know, Lay Down Sally and the... I wasn't feeling that one so much, you know. Everyone says, oh, they played that song at my wedding. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. So in about 1979, 1980, he came out with a record called Just One Night where he was actually playing again. And it was kind of weird because Clapton at that point was actually influenced by Mark Knopfler, even though, of course, Knopfler was influenced by Clapton. It was kind of this retroactive influence thing. So he was playing a clean Strat. But there was this other guitar player playing with him that would trade solos with him, you know, Albert Lee, and I'd hear him play. I was like, wait a minute, that's not the blues, because he started off solos like... I was like, wait a minute, that's not the blues scale. Who is this mutant? So I started reading into who this Albert Lee was, you know, that he was this guy that played in this English band, Head, Hands and Feet, and he played with Emmylou Harris, and he had some solo records. He played with a guy named Dave Edmunds. Any Dave Edmunds fans there? What a rockabilly titan, the band Rockpile, rockin'! Anyways, one of the greatest Dave Edmunds records is a record called Repeat When Necessary, and he's got a tune on there called Sweet Little Lisa. And Albert Lee plays on that thing, it's like... And Albert Lee comes in there... I gotta get into this. I don't care about that cornfield on Hee-Haw. I'm getting into this kind of activity, you know what I'm saying? And then right around the time too, I was listening to a bunch of Dire Straits stuff. You know? Of course, you heard that on the radio. When you hear that. First time I was like, giddy up, I gotta get me some of that. And then every time he would do a rhythm thing too, it was never straight, it was always had this cool percussive. I thought, man, that is wicked, you know what I'm saying? I gotta learn how to do that. But see, back then, around this period of time, it was, this style of guitar playing, really rock guitar styles in general, is very much an oral tradition. I mean, you couldn't walk into Casio Music back there and look at the sheet music and say, oh look, it's the Dire Straits songbook directly off the record, transcribed in tablature that I can know where everything is in the right neck. Back then, music books were very, very deceiving. I remember I used to go into stores and there'd be like, you know, the Jimi Hendrix anthology. Like, excellent. I'm gonna get this thing, I'm gonna learn how to play these Jimi songs that I've only fantasized about even being a possibility to play. And you'd open it up and it had all these cool pictures of it and stuff, of old Jim and his various different ensembles. But then you'd look at the charts themselves and they would be, you know, the name of the tune, the lyric, and then like these cowboy chords over the top that you know Jimmy never played those chords in a million years. There was no insight at all. Further kind of adding to the legend of, well, of course it's impossible to play. Who do you think you are? You think you're gonna play this song? Forget it. Learn the words, you know? So, you know, back then basically we had vinyl and we had beer. I know you know what I'm talking about. You'd sit at that record player for hours on end, sitting there going, seeking some solace and fermented entertainment of some sort. And I remember the other thing you would do is you'd actually go out and see somebody at a live show, watch what they were doing, and steal it. You know, because remember what old Stravinsky said? He said, mediocre musicians borrow and great musicians steal. It's nice to know that even in the legitimate world of classical music that they're all scumbags. You know what I'm saying? It's very, very reinforcing. Anyway, so a friend of mine called. He was going to school in Madison at the time. I was still in high school for, you know, like the 7th year or whatever. And he calls me up and he goes, you should come up this weekend. There's this guitar player playing at the Rathskeller. Apparently he's really into Mark Knopfler. And I thought, wicked, I'll go see this cat, I'll see what he's doing, and maybe I'll get a little insight on how to unleash this poultry from within, you know what I'm saying? So I go see the guy, and I remember he had a Strat, and he had the right tone and all. But when it came time to do that thing, he's going, what's up with that? You know, he's not doing the ba-diddle-a-ba-diddle-a-ba-diddle thing. And you know why he wasn't doing it? Because he was a slacker and a loser. I'm going, why not the extra effort there, Mr. Man? You know what I'm saying? And then when you're doing the rhythm thing, you never... Which has got the thing, it's got the grease, it's got the gristle. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't until I got home and there was a Guitar Player magazine and there was a picture of Mark Knopfler, and in his right hand there was no pick. It just was like a claw that was taking the strings by storm, like a savage beast, and tugging him into submission. And I thought, well, this must be where all this extra percussive poultry activity is coming from. So I started messing around. All that kind of stuff. So I'm going to show you how to do this, because when I figured out what it is, I stash my pick in between my first and middle fingers when I do that stuff. And then I basically use the thumb and the first finger together to get this chicken pick thing happening. It's not dissimilar to like the pizzicato thing that bass players do, and there's other ways of doing it, but this is the way that I found that's very, very effective for getting a really pronounced chicken pick. And there's two things that go into it. For one thing, you're hitting a note that's completely muted, so you get a pronounced thwack, if you will. And then you actually lift the string up a little bit, and you pop it back down again. So if this is the string of the guitar, I put my first finger underneath the string, and I put my thumb on top of the same doggone string. And then what happens is that the thumb plucks a note that's completely muted because your first finger's right behind it. And then you lift up that string and you pop it back down again. So between those two, you got this thwack pop in rapid succession. So if I do it on the A string of the guitar, it's kind of easy on a Strat because the middle pickup kind of serves as a kind of a handy dandy visual aid, if you will. So I'm going to put that first finger down on the A string right in the middle pickup. I'm going to put the thumb a little bit more towards where the neck is at. And then the thumb plucks that note that's muted, so you just get a big old thud, because your first finger's right behind it on the same string, so you get a big old thud. And then I lift up that string, and I pop it afterwards. Whatever. You get the idea, you get that little... But here's the deal, you know guitar players, you know how we do. We learn something new when we figure we have to do it in every solo and every song for like the next 3 weeks or something, you know what I'm saying? So I got news for you. If you're playing out tonight with your 80s cover band and you're doing a red hot version of We Built This City on Rock and Roll, and it comes time for you to do some kind of extemporaneous solo activity, and you decide to go, it's chicken picking time! Maybe you might get fired, you know what I'm saying? But as I like to say, if your band is doing that song to begin with, maybe termination isn't such a bad thing. Who's with me on that? Or REO Speedwagon, another one of my favorites. A chicken picking version of Riding the Storm Out. You know what I'm saying? Sorry about that. Got it from a friend who... Remember that song? It's better left unremembered. No, sorry. Sorry, there's probably a bunch of REO Speedwagon fans here, are there? All right, they're great. I had REO 2 and I had the live record back in the day with the Turkey Tribe. I can't believe I even remember that song. That is disgusting. It's kind of a cool little riff, though, to be honest with you. Anyway. So anyways, this chicken picking thing you can add to a bunch of different scenarios, and what I always do is I always tell people just take a blues scale and use the blues scale as kind of a template to practice nuance-oriented stuff, because the blues scale is the expressway to improvisatory activity. You know, you learn the blues scale, you know, minor pentatonic scale with an added flatted fifth. Okay, you've heard that a million times. Blues scale, you know, minor pentatonic scale with an added flatted fifth, the tonus diabolicus, if you will. So if we take that scale, it's a good thing to just practice chicken picking over every note of that scale, because obviously you have to go from string to string, and every string has a different gauge. It takes a little while to get this thing down. So So with just that much info, you can take, you know, different licks that you have and just kind of, you know, it's just the blues scale. I'm playing with some chicken picking and it sounds something completely different. Now the other thing I do is I like to add open string pull-offs to a lot of different things, and that ranges from anything from, you know, back in the day you used to hear Les Paul doing that. All that kind of stuff. Chet Atkins, of course, doing all that kind of... whatever, all that kind of open string pull-off stuff adds this sense of fluidity to everything. And of course in the rock genre, all kinds of people from, you know, Skinner to the Zeppelin. That's the greatest Jimmy Page lick ever, bud. Anyways, Jim Page used to do that back. Anyways, so the idea of doing the open string pull-off works well for practicing your chicken picking with the open string pull-off, because then you can take licks that you have and morph them. So with the exercise of taking the blues scale, doing a chicken pick, and then pulling off and let the open string ring that you're on. So with just that much info, you can take any lick that's in your arsenal. You can take like a Hendrixianism, like a... Jimmy used to do these epic versions of Red House. My favorite Hendrixian period, although they're all delicious. But in the early part of 1969, towards the end of the Experience, Hendrix was at his peak of savagery. The band was tight. They used to do these epic long versions of tunes. Hendrix's tone was unbelievable at that particular point in time. And I remember I had this vinyl record of Hendrix in the West. Did anyone have that record? Hendrix in the West. It was this, I think it was an import. And he did a version of Red House on there that was apt, and actually the Red House and the version of Voodoo Child and the version of Little Wing on there are just epic. And they're all from the same show. It erroneously lists it in the record as being from the San Diego Sports Arena. They were actually taken from an appearance at the Royal Albert Hall in like February of 1969. And Hendrix's tone, everything is just epic. And when he would do these versions back then of Red House, he'd start kind of, you know, with a cleaner tone. But you get the idea. And now with that kind of stuff, you know, he would use the middle pickup and he would choke weight up on the pick to get these kind of pinch harmonics, but with a clean tone. And the best I can figure, I always try to figure out where people get their stuff from. You know what I mean? And Hendrix was a huge Albert King fan. He was a huge Elmore James fan, but he was, you know, the Albert King thing was very prevalent in his playing. Of course, Albert King played a flying V. He played it left-handed. He played it upside down, so the high strings were on the top. And he used his thumb, and he always he used like the in-between, not all the time, but a lot of the times he used the in-between pickup selection with those two humbuckers, but he had them wired out of phase. So we'd get this almost kind of Strat-like tone. And when he